In this video, we're going to go over the basic function of the Garmin Delta XC Sport and the Garmin Delta XC. First, let me show you how to set up your charger. We have the wall unit. The little plug actually comes separate. You'll just slide that in, click it into place. You're going to find the longer cord with the USB end. It plugs right into the bottom here. And then you're going to plug in the Y adapter into that. And so that gives you the ability to charge both the collar and the remote at the same time. In order to charge the collar, you're going to need to clip this little plate in. You see it has a place for that right here. So you can clip that in. I do recommend that once you have this clipped into your wire, that you never unplug this. What'll tend to happen is we end up putting this onto our collar, and if you end up unplugging it, that's going to stay on there. It will eventually pop off when it bumps into something and you'll lose it. Garmin will be happy to sell you another one, but you don't want to have to do that. So once you have that on, leave it plugged in when you unclip. And as you can see there, to clip the charger onto the collar, there's a couple of little kind of protrusions here. And there's a little protrusion here. Just line those up, press it, it'll snap on. It's on pretty securely, and then snap it off that way. There's a power button on the back of your collar, and there's also a power button on the remote. So both of these will have to be turned on in order to use your collars. On the back of the collar, you'll see on the collar I have here, it's this little black button. Some of them are gray, but it's this here, and you press. When you press this button, and you may or may not hear it on camera, there's going to be 2 beeps, and then you're going to see this green light begin to blink about every 3 or 4 seconds. There you go. When you see the green light blinking, you know that it's on and it's ready to use. If you ever see this light blinking yellow, or what they call amber, or red, it means the battery in this unit is about to go out. There is a different flash that you'll see when we use the built-in bark collar, but if you see a double blink of either yellow or red, the battery is very low. If you see it blinking green, you're good to go. Here's an example of what it looks like when your battery is getting low. You'll see the orange reddish blink as opposed to the green double blink. In order to turn this collar off, just hold the button down. You'll hear one long beep, and now the collar's turned off. On the handheld, our power button is on the top left side here. This is actually a multi-function button. It not only turns this remote on and off, but it also activates and deactivates and allows you to set up the automatic bark collar. On this unit here, I recommend to clients never turning it off. The battery in this, for me, usually lasts 1 to 2 weeks, where the battery and the collar only last about 2 days. So there's really no reason to turn this off if you're following my recommendation of putting this on the charger every night to make sure it's ready for the next day. So once we turn this on, I'm going to hold this button down here on the top left. You'll see everything light up here. And of course, once I press this button, now this collar is ready to be used. We're going to go over all the functions now of the remote itself. So other than the power button, which again we're never really going to use because you can just leave this on, the next one we go down to on the bottom left side is the mode button. So if you'll watch these 3 little letters on the screen here move around as I press the mode button, those 3 letters represent the 3 buttons, and it tells you what each button is going to do. So you can actually change what each button does. Page 9 of your manual will explain all of the different settings and the letters and what they mean. We'll go over that a bit briefly, but refer to your manual on page 9 for that. Typically, for most clients, I'm going to be using a CMM setup, but just refer to what I've told you to do with your particular dog and your collar. If you ever get bumped off of that, just go right back to the setting that you had it on before. On the top right side, we have the up and down levels. So as I press these, collar goes up and down on levels. It goes from 1 to 18. It does have 1 to 18 low and 1 to 18 high or regular. So there's basically 2 different tiers. Again, refer to your manual for which buttons do what. This button here just below the up and down buttons, it's a little bit wider button, will actually switch between 3 different collars. So you can actually have 3 different collars associated to one remote. Okay. If you only have one dog, we actually want to keep it on this black. The way that you're going to do that is you're going to hold that button. You'll see it kind of light up all 3, and now it went to just the one. Now when I press this button, it's actually locked out. If you ever find that you have been able to switch between 2 and you didn't want to, it's because this button was depressed for more than a few seconds. And you see as I do this, it'll cycle through. Now it's these 2. And if I keep doing it, it'll go to all 3. Okay, now I can cycle through all 3. And if I hold it down one more time, we're back to just being locked in on the one and it won't move. For those of you that have the Garmin Delta XC, which is their base model without the bark collar built in, the major difference is going to be in the letter configurations that you have in the bottom and the options you have for these buttons. You'll see with this one, we basically have 3 options. We have VCM, TVM, and TCM. With the Delta XC Sport, we have 5 different options. So just note that. This also does not have the built-in bark collar. The Delta XC has a half-mile range. The XC Sport has a 3/4 mile range. So that's your major differences between the 2 collars. The Delta XC base model retails for $169, and the XC Sport retails for $219. With many dogs, I'm going to replace the contact points that are on the collar as they come. So these are actually the longer contact points. These are about a 1/2 inch long. They typically, I think, actually always come with shorter points, which are about a 1/4 inch. I find with the longer points, they just tend to make a lot better contact. You don't have to put the collar quite as tight, so that really works well for most dogs that I work with. So we have our collar on. Our remote is on. We're going to depress the power button briefly. You'll see these 3 letters disappear. Whenever you see these 3 letters disappear, that means you're in the setup mode for the bark collar. You can see the little bark head icon here. You'll see the U. That's actually meant to be a V for vibrate. When you're in this screen where you don't see any letters, you're in the setup screen for the bark collar. Whatever shows on the screen is what the bark collar is going to do when it's activated from the vibration sensor on the collar. So all the way at the lowest level is this, which is vibrate. If we go up 1, it's what we call auto rise. What this means is the collar will actually begin to adjust up and down to figure out what level your dog needs in order to stop barking. I used to use this quite a bit. I don't use it anymore. I much prefer now to use what we call the direct settings. So if I continue to go up on the collar, I get to my normal numbers all the way up to 18. And so we can set the collar manually to give just the level of correction that we want. For most dogs, we're going to be certainly less than a 10, but please refer to any instructions that I give you about what levels you should have your collar on. What you're going to see here is once I set it, let's say to a 5, when I press this button here at the top, it's going to bring the 3 letters back at the bottom here. That tells me I'm back into my normal operating mode. You're also going to see that the little icon for the bark collar remains on the screen. Also, what I'd like you to look for when I do this is this green light is going to light up continually for just a few seconds, and there's going to be an orange blink. That tells you that your bark collar is active. do one long green flash and then an orange blip. That tells you that the bark collar is on. You need to go through this process every time you take both of these off of the charger. If I were to plug both of these in right now, the screen would just turn into a little blinking power meter, and this would turn red until it was fully charged, and then you'd have a solid green light. When you pull these off of the charger, this would come back on just as you see it now. This will be off. You need to turn the collar unit back on and then press this top left button 3 times to cycle through that process to get back to activating the bark collar. So once, twice, third time, look for the long green light and the orange blink. And now your bark collar is active again. So anytime the collar itself gets turned off and then back on, you need to press this 3 times to cycle back to turning the bark collar on.